A waitress brings her daughter to a wedding, and she runs to hug the millionaire groom, calling him Dad. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. I am your temporary host, James Peter, and it's an absolute honor to be here with you today. As we step into this beautiful Friday, let's start with a heartfelt prayer for my amazing family. May your hearts be filled with peace, your homes with joy, and your lives with endless blessings. Now, my family, are you happy with my efforts? Let me know. And of course, let's take our attendance. Drop a comment. Let me see you. Once that's done, let's dive straight into today's story. The Manhattan skyline glittered against the midnight sky, each light a silent witness to the city's endless ambitions. Rain fell in sheets, transforming Fifth Avenue into a river of reflected neon. Through this deluge, a Ferrari Roma, sleek and predatory, weaved dangerously between taxis, its engine growling in protest. Behind the wheel, Alistair Cook gripped the leather with white knuckles, his vision blurring at the edges. The board meeting had devolved into a bloodbath, with investors questioning his acquisition strategy. 5 glasses of Macallan later, he'd stormed out, ignoring his driver in favor of the false control the Ferrari offered. "Worthless parasites," he muttered, accelerating through a yellow light. The speedometer climbed past 60 in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. 12 blocks away, Taraji Zola stood beneath the awning of her university's library, clutching her economics diploma against her chest to shield it from the rain. 6 years of grinding poverty, of juggling 3 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, all culminating in this moment of hard-won freedom. No more student loans hanging over her head like a guillotine. No more apologizing for taking up space in rooms filled with trust fund legacies. "Taxi," she called, one hand raised toward the street. The yellow cab swerved toward her, then suddenly jerked to a halt as a red blur shot through the intersection. Time slowed as Taraji watched the Ferrari hydroplane, spinning once before smashing into the concrete divider. The passenger side crumpled like paper, the impact sending showers of broken glass across the slick pavement. Smoke began curling from beneath the hood. Without hesitation, Taraji dropped her diploma into a puddle and ran. The rain soaked through her graduation dress in seconds as she reached the mangled vehicle. Through the spider-webbed windshield, she could see the driver slumped over the wheel, blood trickling from a gash on his forehead. "Sir, can you hear me?" She yanked at the door handle. It gave way with a metallic groan. The man inside was impeccably dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit, now stained with blood and whiskey. His eyes fluttered open, piercing blue, disoriented, but somehow still commanding even in weakness. "We need to get you out," Taraji insisted, the smell of gasoline growing stronger. "Can you move?" Alistair's gaze focused on her face, a stranger's face, haloed by the street lights, rain making rivulets down brown skin that seemed to glow from within. For a moment he thought he might be hallucinating or already dead. "My leg," he managed, his voice rough with pain and alcohol. Taraji reached across him, unfastening his seatbelt. The movement brought her close enough to feel his breath against her neck, expensive scotch and the metallic tang of blood. As she helped him shift toward the door, the Ferrari groaned ominously. "We don't have much time," she warned, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. Together they stumbled away from the wreckage, making it 10 steps before the car erupted in flames behind them. The heat scorched their backs as they collapsed onto the wet sidewalk, Alistair's weight bearing Taraji down beneath him. For 3 heartbeats they remained frozen, her body cushioning his fall, his arms instinctively wrapped around her. Their eyes locked in silent acknowledgement of what had just transpired. A life exchanged for a life. "You saved me," he said, sounding more bewildered than grateful. "Don't make me regret it," Taraji replied, helping him sit upright as sirens wailed in the distance. The paramedics wanted to take Alistair to Mount Sinai, but he refused with the practiced authority of a man accustomed to bending the world to his will. "My personal physician is waiting at my residence," he lied smoothly, pressing several $100 bills into the lead paramedic's palm. "Sir, you've likely got a concussion," the young medic began. "What I have is a board meeting at 9 a.m., Alistair countered, his voice leaving no room for argument, despite the blood still matting his hair. Taraji, having given her statement to the police, was preparing to leave when Alistair's hand closed around her wrist. "You're coming with me." "Excuse me. I owe you my life. At least let me offer you a dry place to wait out the storm." He gestured toward her ruined graduation dress, now transparent in the flashing emergency lights. Something in his tone, not quite a command, not quite a plea, made Taraji hesitate. Her apartment was 20 blocks and 2 train transfers away. Her only possession of value now lay ruined in a puddle. "Fine, but just until the rain stops." Alistair's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a Manhattan, transformed into an impressionist painting by the rain. While a housekeeper drew Alistair a bath and prepared his medications, he offered Taraji dry clothes and the guest suite. "You should rest," she suggested, noting how he winced with each movement. "I never rest," he replied simply, pouring 2 glasses of cognac. "Tell me who you are." Their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Her fresh economics degree, his empire built from a single failing hotel inherited from his grandfather. They spoke of market theories and global expansion, finding unexpected common ground despite the gulf of privilege between them. As the storm intensified, thunder rattled the windows. Alistair moved closer, ostensibly to refill her glass. His fingers brushed hers, a deliberate touch that sent electricity up her arm. "You're not what I expected," he admitted, his voice lower now. "And what did you expect, Mr. Cook?" Someone who would have already asked for a reward. Taraji's expression hardened. "I don't save lives for profit." Lightning illuminated his features, the sharp jawline, the intensity in his gaze that seemed to strip away her defenses. "Then why did you do it?" "Because you needed saving." Her answer was simple, direct. The air between them charged with something dangerous and inevitable. When his hand cupped her cheek, she knew she should pull away. This man represented everything she'd spent 6 years fighting against. Privilege without accountability, wealth without conscience. Yet when his lips found hers, tasting of cognac and the metallic hint of blood, Taraji found herself responding with a hunger that startled them both. Their coming together was neither gentle nor tentative. It was recognition, a collision as powerful as the one that had brought them together. Hours later, as Alistair finally succumbed to exhaustion beside her, Taraji watched the first gray light of dawn filter through the windows. She traced the bruises forming along his ribs, evidence of the crash that had entangled their lives. For the first time since her mother's death, she felt something crack open inside her. Possibility, danger, or perhaps both. By the time Alistair awakened, she had vanished, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of her skin on his sheets and a void he couldn't yet comprehend. What neither of them knew as the sun rose over Manhattan was that their collision had created something that would bind them irrevocably, a new life already taking form, destined to draw them back into each other's orbit when they least expected it. Chapter 2. The search for 3 days. Alistair drifted through his empire in a daze, the phantom scent of Taraji's skin following him into board meetings and investor calls. He found himself searching for her face in every lobby, every restaurant, every crowded street corner. Without a last name or contact information, he had nothing but fragmented memories to sustain him. The curve of her smile, the defiance in her eyes, the way her body had moved beneath his. Sir, the Macau acquisition papers need your signature, his assistant reminded him, concern evident in her voice. Alistair nodded absently, his attention caught by a woman with similar height and coloring crossing the hotel atrium. When she turned, revealing a stranger's face, disappointment lanced through him with surprising intensity. Mr. Cook, his security chief, Reynolds, stood in the doorway. We've reviewed all security footage from the building for the night in question. Alistair straightened, suddenly alert. And she entered at 2:17 a.m. and exited at 5:43 a.m. No identification was provided. You had instructed the night staff to waive normal protocols. What about external cameras, traffic footage? Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. Sir, with all due respect, this level of resources for locating a one-night encounter is— She saved my life, Alistair cut him off, voice dangerously quiet. Find her. He deployed private investigators, offered rewards to doormen and taxi drivers throughout the financial district, and scoured recent economics graduates from every university in the tri-state area. The search became an obsession that surprised even those closest to him. Alistair Cook had conquered markets and crushed competitors without breaking a sweat. But this nameless woman had somehow breached defenses he hadn't known existed. Across town, in a cramped apartment in Crown Heights, Taraji stared at the plastic stick in her hand, two pink lines mocking her carefully constructed plans. She calculated dates in her head, knowing with absolute certainty that the night of the storm, the night of fire and rain and unexpected connection, had changed everything. Her roommate, Layla, knocked softly on the bathroom door. Tara, you've been in there for 30 minutes. Are you okay? Taraji opened the door, wordlessly holding up the pregnancy test. Oh, honey. Layla pulled her into a hug. The guy from graduation night? The one you wouldn't talk about? Taraji nodded against her friend's shoulder. He's not someone I can just call. Later that night, as Layla slept, Taraji opened her laptop and typed Alistair Cook into the search bar. Thousands of results populated her screen. Articles about hotel acquisitions, charity galas, rumored relationships with models and actresses. Images of a man who navigated a world she had only studied in textbooks. A man whose casual charity donations exceeded what she might earn in a lifetime. One photo showed him cutting a ribbon at a hotel opening, his expression revealing nothing of the intensity she'd witnessed in his penthouse. Another captured him escorting a willowy blonde into a benefit, his hand possessively at the small of her back. Taraji closed the laptop, decision crystallizing. Her child deserved more than to be the secret shame of a billionaire playboy, more than a complication to be managed with non-disclosure agreements and trust funds. If this pregnancy was her reality, and she had already decided it would be, then she would face it on her terms. The next morning, she withdrew from her master's program, subletting her room to Layla's cousin. By afternoon, she had purchased a bus ticket to Chicago, where her mother's oldest friend owned a small bakery and had once promised Taraji a place if she ever needed to start over. As Taraji's bus pulled away from Port Authority, Alistair's Ferrari was being delivered to his garage, meticulously restored at astronomical expense. A twisted monument to the night that haunted him. He ran his fingers along the repaired passenger door, remembering how it had groaned open under Taraji's determined hands. "She's good as new, sir," the restoration specialist said proudly. Alistair nodded, knowing that while the car might be repaired, something inside him remained irreparably altered. "No," he said quietly, "she'll never be the same." Meanwhile, in a doctor's office in Chicago, Taraji listened to the rapid flutter of her child's heartbeat for the first time, her hand pressed against her still flat stomach. "It's just you and me now," she whispered to the grainy sonogram image. "And I promise you will never have to beg for anyone's attention or love." Across the country, separate but connected by invisible threads of fate and consequence, two lives diverged, one searching for what was lost, the other protecting what was found. Chapter 3. New Beginnings. 6 years evaporated like morning dew. Chicago had been a temporary haven, Philadelphia too cold, Atlanta too reminiscent of her childhood. Taraji ultimately found herself drawn back to New York, the city's magnetic pull impossible to resist, despite the risk of collision with a past she'd carefully avoided. Zara Cook, though officially registered as Zara Zola, had her father's eyes, startlingly blue against brown skin, and his stubborn determination. At 5, she questioned everything, built complex Lego structures when other children were still mastering shapes, and possessed a gravity that sometimes made Taraji forget she was speaking to a child. "Mama, why do you work at the restaurant when you have all those diplomas?" Zara asked one evening as Taraji soaked her feet after a double shift at Lumiere, the exclusive French restaurant where she'd worked for the past 18 months. "Because at Lumiere I can work nights while you sleep and be with you during the day," Taraji explained, brushing her daughter's tight curls. "Corporate jobs want all of your time, not just some of it." The truth was more complicated. With her unfinished master's degree and unexplained gap years, Taraji's once promising career trajectory had stalled. Waitressing at Lumiere, where a single dinner service could generate more in tips than a week at lesser establishments, allowed her to afford their modest one-bedroom apartment and Zara's private school tuition. "Ms. Chen says I'm ready for the gifted program," Zara announced, carefully placing her homework in a color-coded folder. "It costs more money, though." Taraji's smile never faltered. "Then we'll find the money." The morning ritual began at 5:30 a.m., hours before Taraji's neighbors stirred. She prepared Zara's lunch, sandwich cut in precise triangles, carrot sticks arranged in a star pattern, a note with a daily math puzzle hidden beneath the napkin. While the coffee brewed, she reviewed flashcards for Zara's upcoming spelling test. "Extraordinary," Taraji pronounced. "Extraordinary," Zara spelled without hesitation, small fingers working through each letter in the air. "That's what you are," Taraji said, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. Their apartment occupied the 3rd floor of a walk-up in Astoria, far enough from Manhattan's financial district to minimize accidental encounters, close enough for Taraji's commute to Lumiere. One bedroom with 2 beds, a kitchen barely large enough for their folding table, walls decorated with Zara's artwork and maps marking places they'd someday visit. After school, Zara attended the community center program, where Taraji volunteered weekends teaching financial literacy, trading her hours for Zara's care. The center director, Ms. Haverton, had become their surrogate family. "That child of yours corrected my budget spreadsheet yesterday," Ms. Haverton told Taraji during drop-off. "Found an error in my formula that 3 adults missed. She's got your brain." "And her father's confidence," Taraji replied, the rare acknowledgement of Alistair slipping out unplanned. "You ever think about reaching out to him?" Ms. Haverton asked, not for the first time. Taraji watched Zara join the other children, her posture distinguished by a natural poise none of them shared. "Sometimes. When she asks questions I can't answer. When she shows talents I don't possess." "Like what?" "She designed a skyscraper last week, 90 floors with a structural core that actually made engineering sense. I had to look up the principles to understand what she'd created instinctively." What Taraji didn't share was how she'd later found Zara studying the Cook Tower in an architecture magazine, her small finger tracing the building's distinctive profile with curious recognition. The evening shift at Lumiere transformed Taraji from mother to performer. She memorized wine vintages and chef's specials, moved between tables with practiced grace, calibrated her demeanor to each guest's expectations. The restaurant's clientele included CEOs, celebrities, and political figures drawn by its reputation for discretion and excellence. Miss Zola, Table 7 has requested you specifically, the maitre d' informed her as she arrived. The Adelmans appreciated your knowledge of Bordeaux last month. Taraji navigated the evening with professional precision, her economics education evident in how she guided diners toward higher margin items, while making them feel clever for discovering hidden gems on the menu. By 11, her feet ached beneath sensible but elegant heels, tip money carefully counted and divided with supporting staff. Returning home, she found Miss Nguyen from the neighboring apartment, sitting with Zara. She had a nightmare, Miss Nguyen whispered as Taraji paid her. Something about water and a red car. She wouldn't explain, just asked for her dolphin and that picture she keeps. Taraji thanked her, stomach tightening. Beside Zara's sleeping form lay the crumpled newspaper clipping. Alistair at a charity gala, his profile captured in elegant black and white. Taraji had never shown Zara the photo, never mentioned Alistair by name, yet somehow her daughter had found the clipping in Taraji's keepsake box and claimed it as her own. I just like his face, Zara had explained when questioned. He looks like someone important. Across Manhattan, in a steel and glass tower bearing his name, Alistair Cook reviewed quarterly projections with the detached efficiency that had become his hallmark. At 39, he had expanded Cook Hospitality into 37 countries, tripled his net worth, and earned a reputation for ruthlessness in business dealings that contradicted his generous philanthropic efforts. The board is particularly impressed with the Dubai numbers, his CFO noted. The expansion is outperforming even our most optimistic projections. Alistair nodded, attention already shifting to the next acquisition target. Success had become algorithmic, a series of calculated risks and strategic maneuvers, each victory hollower than the last. "Sir," his assistant interrupted, "Ms. Fontaine's office called. She'd like to confirm dinner at Le Bernardin tonight." Elise Fontaine represented the fourth-generation leadership of Fontaine Hotels, Cook Hospitality's oldest rival. Their courtship, celebrated in business publications as the potential merger of hospitality dynasties, had progressed with the same methodical precision as Alistair's business dealings. After 8 months, he had yet to feel the disorienting pull he'd experienced in a single night 6 years earlier, with a woman whose full name he still didn't know. "Confirm it," he instructed, turning back to the projections. Their dinner possessed all the warmth of a corporate merger discussion. Elise, elegant in Chanel, discussed market position and brand alignment, while Alistair contributed appropriate responses on autopilot. "The board expects an announcement soon," Elise noted between perfect bites of sea bass. "Father particularly mentioned the Dubai investors would be reassured by our union." Alistair nodded, mentally calculating the stock implications. "The timing makes sense strategically." "How romantic," Elise remarked with practiced irony. "Should I expect poetry with the proposal?" Her comment triggered an unexpected memory, Taraji quoting economic theory as they shared cognac during the storm, her passion for market ethics more genuine than any sentiment he'd encountered since. "Alistair," Elise's voice pulled him back. "You disappeared there. Thinking about the Macau acquisition," he lied smoothly. Later, alone in his penthouse office, Alistair pulled up the search algorithm that had been running continuously for 6 years, facial recognition parameters, scanning security footage across New York for a specific combination of features. The program had generated thousands of false positives, each methodically eliminated by his security team. Reynolds, his head of security, delivered the weekly report with characteristic efficiency. "No significant matches, sir." Alistair dismissed him with a nod, attention caught by the latest architectural renderings for the Grand Horizon renovation. The rooftop pool design featured transparent floors, revealing the atrium 56 stories below, an engineering feat that had consumed his attention for months. He made notes on structural modifications, losing himself in the creation of another perfect space he would rarely inhabit. His phone chimed with a calendar alert. Children's Hospital Wing dedication, 9 a.m. The Pediatric Trauma Center represented his largest personal donation to date, though the press release had deliberately understated his contribution. Alistair moved to the window, the same one where he and Taraji had stood watching the storm 6 years earlier. Below, Manhattan glittered with possibilities, millions of lives intersecting in random patterns. Somewhere among those lights, though he couldn't know it, a little girl with his eyes slept beside a faded photograph, connected by invisible threads to a father she had never met, but somehow recognized. Morning found them both awake before dawn, Taraji preparing Zara's favorite breakfast while quizzing her on multiplication tables, Alistair reviewing acquisition documents while his personal trainer counted his repetitions. Two lives operating in separate orbits, unaware that the laws of gravity were already drawing them inexorably toward collision. Chapter 4. The Birthday Surprise. But why can't I have a bouncy castle, Mama? Zara's question echoed through their apartment, blue eyes narrowed in the tactical negotiation strategy she'd recently perfected. Taraji folded another load of laundry, hiding her smile. Because we live in an apartment without a yard, sweetie. But, she added, watching her daughter's expression fall, I have something even better planned for your birthday. Zara perked up immediately. Better than a bouncy castle? Much better. Taraji pulled a glossy brochure from beneath the couch cushion, where she'd hidden it for this exact moment. How would you like to spend your birthday weekend at the Grand Horizon Hotel? Zara's eyes widened as she grabbed the brochure, fingers tracing the image of the hotel's famous glass-bottomed rooftop pool. The fish pool. The one where you can swim and see the whole city. The very same. Taraji had been saving for months, picking up extra shifts and selling her vintage handbag collection on consignment to afford the junior suite for 2 nights. The Grand Horizon was Cook Hospitality's flagship property, a risk Taraji had calculated carefully. The massive hotel hosted thousands of guests weekly. The statistical probability of encountering Alistair himself was negligible. Can I wear my mermaid tail in the pool? Zara asked, already dancing around the living room with the brochure clutched to her chest. Absolutely. And we're going to have room service breakfast and see the Princess musical in the hotel theater. Taraji caught her spinning daughter, pulling her into a tight hug. Happy almost birthday, little fish. That evening, after Zara had finally succumbed to sleep amidst elaborate birthday plans, Taraji reviewed her precautions once more. She had booked under her mother's maiden name, requested a high floor away from the penthouse suites, and studied the hotel's event calendar to avoid any functions likely to draw executive presence. The Grand Horizon's immense size and renowned privacy policies would provide adequate camouflage for their weekend adventure. Across the city, in the corporate headquarters of Cook Hospitality, Alistair reviewed final arrangements for a very different celebration. In 3 days, he would announce his engagement to Elise Fontaine at an exclusive gala in the Grand Horizon's ballroom. The merger announcement will follow the engagement by approximately 1 month, his PR director explained. Market analysts predict a 15% stock jump immediately following. Alistair nodded, studying the seating chart with detached interest. The engagement was strategic, beneficial to both companies and their shareholders. Elise understood this arrangement as well as he did. Passion was irrelevant, compatibility sufficient, mutual ambition the primary binding agent. Security protocols, he inquired, signing off on the final arrangements. Standard executive protection, plus additional measures for the Fontaine family and the Princess of Monaco, who confirmed this morning. Fine. I'll arrive an hour early to handle any issues personally. What neither Alistair nor Taraji could anticipate was how their carefully laid plans would collide in exactly the wrong place at precisely the right time. Friday afternoon found Taraji and Zara checking into the Grand Horizon, the little girl vibrating with excitement as she clutched her overnight bag shaped like a dolphin. The lobby soared 80 feet upward, a cathedral of luxury with marble floors that reflected crystal chandeliers and living walls of emerald foliage. "Your suite is on the 32nd floor, Miss Johnson," the receptionist smiled, using the false name Taraji had registered under. "Our children's welcome ambassador will escort you and provide Zara with her special birthday package." A young staff member appeared with a small silver tiara for Zara and a hotel passport to collect stamps from various amenities. As they crossed the vast lobby toward the elevator bank, Taraji's shoulders gradually relaxed. They had successfully infiltrated Alistair's domain without detection. Meanwhile, in the executive offices above the hotel, Alistair reviewed security protocols with Reynolds, his chief of security. "The ballroom is secured, and we've reserved the entire 56th floor for VIP guests," Reynolds confirmed. Ms. Fontaine's team requested access to the rooftop pool for private photos before the announcement. "Granted, but close it to other guests during that time." Alistair straightened his tie, preparing for the final walkthrough. "Let's get this over with." "Sir," Reynolds hesitated, "there's something else. The search algorithm you've had running for 6 years flagged a potential match yesterday." Alistair froze, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "Show me." Reynolds handed him a tablet displaying grainy security footage from a Brooklyn subway station. A woman with familiar features hurried through the turnstile, a small child in tow. The image quality was poor, the angle unfavorable, but something in the woman's fluid grace triggered a visceral response. "Facial recognition is only 62% confident," Reynolds cautioned. "We're attempting to track her movements, but—" "Expand the search parameters. I want every camera in the city checked." Alistair's voice had acquired an urgency absent in boardrooms and merger negotiations. "And I want her name." As Alistair set in motion yet another hunt for the woman who had haunted him for 6 years, Taraji and Zara explored the wonders of the Grand Horizon. They visited the children's library with its enchanted forest theme, collected stamps at the pastry shop and the miniature golf course, and finally made their way to the crown jewel, the rooftop pool. "Look, Mama." Zara pressed her face against the glass wall overlooking Manhattan. "The whole world is tiny," Taraji laughed, adjusting her daughter's swim cap. "Ready to try the famous fish pool?" They changed in the luxurious locker room, Zara proudly donning the shimmering mermaid tail she'd received for Hanukkah. As they approached the pool's edge, a staff member intercepted them. "I'm sorry, but the pool is closing for a private event in 15 minutes. Taraji checked her watch, dismayed. "Could we have just a quick swim? It's my daughter's birthday surprise." The attendant wavered, noting Zara's crestfallen expression. 15 minutes only, and then you'll need to exit through the eastern stairwell." Zara didn't waste a second, slipping into the crystal-clear water with a delighted squeal. Taraji followed more cautiously, gasping as she peered through the transparent bottom at the hotel atrium 56 stories below. "We're flying, Mama," Zara called, paddling in her mermaid tail. For 13 precious minutes they inhabited a perfect bubble of joy, mother and daughter suspended between earth and sky, insulated from past complications and future uncertainties. Then the elevator doors opened, disgorging photographers, assistants, and security personnel. "Time to go, little fish," Taraji called, helping Zara toward the edge of the pool farthest from the new arrivals. But Zara, entranced by the commotion, hesitated. "Who are those people? Are they famous?" "Probably, honey." This hotel hosts lots of celebrities. Taraji wrapped a towel around her daughter, steering her toward the changing rooms. Let's get dressed for dinner. They were almost clear when the second elevator arrived. Taraji's blood froze as Alistair Cook stepped out, immaculate in a charcoal suit, flanked by bodyguards and a statuesque blonde whose diamond bracelet caught the setting sun. Wait here, Taraji whispered to Zara, positioning herself between her daughter and the new arrivals. I need to check something. But fate, having orchestrated this collision across 6 years and countless decisions, would not be denied its moment. As Taraji inched toward the exit, Zara spotted the small photograph that had fallen from her mother's pool bag. A crumpled newspaper clipping Taraji had kept since Chicago, showing Alistair at a charity gala. "Mama, you dropped Daddy's picture." The words, spoken in a child's carrying voice, cut through the ambient noise like a scalpel. Taraji lunged for the photograph, but it was too late. Zara had already darted around her, scooping up the clipping and turning toward the newcomers with the instinctive recognition that children sometimes possess. Her eyes locked with Alistair's across the pool deck, identical blue, meeting blue in a moment of genetic recognition that transcended logical explanation. Before Taraji could intercept her, Zara was running, wet feet slapping against marble, straight toward the man she had somehow identified from a single tattered photograph. "Daddy!" she cried, arms outstretched as she collided with Alistair's legs, embracing him with the absolute certainty of belonging. The rooftop fell silent. Time suspended as Taraji watched Alistair's expression transform from confusion to shock to dawning comprehension. His gaze lifted from the child clutching his knees to find Taraji frozen in horror across the deck. "Taraji," he breathed, her name both question and answer. Beside him, Elise Fontaine's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against marble in a crystalline explosion that perfectly mirrored the destruction of carefully constructed, separate lives. Chapter 5. Worlds Collide. The presidential suite at the Grand Horizon became the silent battlefield for 3 lives suddenly entangled by fate's cruel theater. Secluded from press and hotel guests, with Reynolds' security team maintaining absolute privacy, the aftermath of the pool deck revelation unfolded with the intensity of a supernova. Destruction and creation, simultaneously born from cosmic collision. Zara, oblivious to the adult catastrophe surrounding her, bounced on the suite's enormous sofa, her wet mermaid tail abandoned for hotel slippers as she explored her new surroundings with unguarded excitement. "This place has TVs in the bathroom mirrors. And look," she gasped, opening the minibar, "tiny soda bottles." "Can I have one, Mama?" Taraji nodded automatically, her attention fixed on Alistair, who stood at the window, his back a rigid line of tension as he stared out at Manhattan. The skyline he owned in fragments stretched before him, a concrete empire that suddenly seemed hollow against the flesh and blood legacy he hadn't known existed. 6 years, he said at last, not turning. The words fell into the room like stones into a still pond, ripples of accusation spreading outward. "Zara," Taraji kept her voice deliberately light, "why don't you explore the bedroom? I think there might be a treasure hunt kit in the welcome package." The child needed no further encouragement, skipping toward the master suite with childish delight. The moment the door closed behind her, Alistair turned, and Taraji nearly flinched at the controlled fury in his expression. 6 years, he repeated, each syllable a perfect distillation of betrayal. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or would I have lived my entire life not knowing I had a daughter?" Taraji raised her chin, meeting his anger with the protective ferocity of motherhood. "I made the decision I thought best at the time." "Best for whom?" Alistair advanced toward her, precision in every step. "Certainly not for me, and certainly not for her." You don't get to judge my choices when you had no idea what I was facing. Taraji kept her voice low but intense, mindful of Zara in the next room. I was 23, just starting my career. You were Alistair Cook, hotel tycoon with a different socialite on your arm every month. What was I supposed to do? You could have trusted me with the truth. I didn't know you, Taraji countered. One night, no matter how significant, doesn't establish trust. A throat cleared from the doorway. Reynolds stood with perfect professional detachment, though his eyes betrayed awareness of the intensity he'd interrupted. Sir, Miss Fontaine is in the lobby with her father and their attorneys. They're demanding an immediate conference. The mention of Elise broke through the charged atmosphere between them. Alistair's expression shifted, corporate calculation replacing raw emotion. Tell them I'll meet them in 30 minutes in the executive conference room. No press. As Reynolds departed, Taraji wrapped her arms around herself, the reality of their situation sinking in. I'm sorry about your engagement. Are you? The question wasn't accusatory, merely curious. I never intended, she gestured vaguely, any of this. We were supposed to be here for Zara's birthday, swim in the pool, see the Princess musical, and leave. The statistical probability of encountering you was negligible. Chapter 6. Confrontation's rain lashed against the windows of Alistair's Upper East Side townhouse as thunder rolled across Manhattan. The storm echoed the tempest unfolding inside. 6 years, Alistair's voice cut through the room like a blade. 6 years, Taraji. You kept my child from me for 6 years. Zara slept soundly in the adjacent room, exhausted from the day's emotional upheavals. Taraji stood her ground, arms crossed defensively. I kept her from becoming a footnote in your empire-building narrative, she countered. What was I supposed to do? I was 23 with student loans and a career ahead of me. You were on page 6 every week with a different socialite. You should have given me the chance to decide what kind of father I wanted to be. The kind who shows up for swimming lessons, school plays, nightmares at 3 a.m. Taraji's voice cracked slightly. Your world doesn't make space for messy childhood realities. Alistair's jaw tightened. You had no right to make that decision unilaterally. I had every right to protect my child from becoming a corporate acquisition or PR problem. They circled each other like wounded predators, 6 years of divergent lives creating an unbridgeable chasm between them. Alistair moved to the window, watching lightning illuminate the city. I looked for you, he said quietly, for years. Private investigators, facial recognition software, hotel staff with your description. The confession hung between them, altering the emotional landscape. Taraji sank into a leather chair, momentarily disarmed. Why? Because that night. He turned, raw honesty replacing businesslike efficiency. That night was the only real thing in my life in years. Before Taraji could respond, Reynolds appeared in the doorway. Sir, Ms. Fontaine's attorneys are demanding an immediate response. They've suggested a press conference with both families tomorrow morning. Alistair's expression hardened. Not happening. Tell them we'll proceed as discussed. After Reynolds departed, Taraji asked the inevitable question. What happens now? Now we establish legal acknowledgement of my paternity. I'll create trusts for Zara's education, health care. Stop. Taraji rose, fire in her eyes. I'm not looking for financial benefit. This isn't a negotiation. This isn't about you, Alistair snapped. It's about providing my daughter with every advantage. Your daughter has been thriving without your advantages for 6 years, Taraji challenged. She doesn't need your money. She needs a father who sees her as more than an heir to groom or a PR crisis to manage. The accusation landed with precision. Alistair's expression shifted from corporate calculation to something raw. You don't know what kind of father I'll be, he said, voice dangerously quiet. You never gave me the chance to find out. A soft whimper from the doorway froze them both. Zara stood in her borrowed pajamas, tears welling in eyes identical to her father's. Are you fighting because of me? Her small voice cut through their anger more effectively than any argument. Taraji crossed to her daughter immediately, kneeling to eye level. No, baby, we're just having a grown-up discussion about complicated things. Are we going home tomorrow? Zara asked, uncertain eyes darting between her mother and the stranger who was suddenly her father. Before Taraji could answer, Alistair knelt beside them, maintaining careful distance while meeting his daughter's gaze directly. This is complicated for all of us, he said with unexpected gentleness. But I'd like you and your mother to stay a little while, so we can get to know each other. Would that be okay with you? The simple question, asking rather than commanding, shifted something in the room's atmosphere. For the first time, Alistair was engaging with Zara as a person with agency rather than a possession to claim. Zara studied him with the unfiltered assessment only children can manage. Do you know how to make chocolate chip pancakes? A smile touched Alistair's lips, genuine, unguarded. Number, but I'm an excellent student when properly motivated. The tension eased fractionally as Zara accepted this answer with a solemn nod before allowing Taraji to lead her back to bed. When Taraji returned, Alistair had poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one as a tentative peace offering. 72 hours, Taraji said, accepting the glass without drinking. We'll stay 3 days while we figure out a reasonable arrangement, but we do this my way, at Zara's pace, with her needs first. Alistair nodded, recognizing both the concession and the boundary it represented. Agreed. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside a fragile ceasefire had been established. Not peace, not yet understanding, but the recognition that the battlefield needed to shift for their daughter's sake. Chapter 7. Uneasy Truce. The first month of co-parenting unfolded like a corporate merger, structured, tense, and governed by unspoken rules. Alistair converted an entire floor of his building into a haven for Taraji and Zara, close enough for convenience, separate enough for boundaries. The apartment, while technically a guest residence, had been transformed overnight with expert precision. Zara's bedroom featured constellations on the ceiling that matched exactly those visible from her Astoria window, while the kitchen contained the same brand of coffee maker Taraji used every morning. Her school uniforms go in this drawer, Taraji explained during the first handoff, clinical in her precision. She needs her stuffed octopus for sleep, and she won't eat anything green except peas. What about her academic schedule? Alistair made notes in a leather-bound journal, his attention absolute. Any tutoring I should continue? She has advanced math on Tuesdays and creative writing on Thursdays. Taraji hesitated, then added, She's been asking about architecture classes. That seems to come from your side. Alistair absorbed these details with the same intensity he applied to billion-dollar acquisitions. While Taraji wasn't looking, he hired 3 different experts in child development, read parenting books during midnight calls with Tokyo investors, and approached fatherhood like a skill to master. His executive assistant found herself researching the best children's museums in Manhattan instead of scheduling board meetings. What neither Taraji nor Alistair expected was Zara's uncomplicated acceptance. She moved between worlds with an adaptability that humbled them both, trading her small bedroom for a custom playroom, accepting chauffeurs and housekeepers with the same enthusiasm she gave the corner bodega owner who had been slipping her free candies for years. Mr. Reynolds showed me how the security cameras work, Zara informed Taraji during their 3rd week of the arrangement, referring to Alistair's chief of security as if they were old friends. He says I have good observation skills. Taraji found herself navigating unexpected emotions, relief that Zara was adjusting, guilt that her daughter seemed to flourish in this new environment, and an unsettling jealousy when Zara returned from Alistair's care with stories of adventures Taraji couldn't provide. Daddy took me to the observatory on top of the Empire State Building after it was closed to everyone else, Zara recounted, eyes wide with wonder. The astronomer let me use the special telescope to see Jupiter's moons. That sounds wonderful, sweetie, Taraji managed, silently wondering how to compete with private observatory access while maintaining her principles about wealth and privilege. The real shift came during Alistair's first solo weekend with Zara. Taraji had prepared herself for anxiety, had even asked Reynolds to send discreet updates. Instead, Reynolds sent only one text. Mr. Cook cancelled Dubai meeting, currently building fort in dining room. When Taraji arrived Sunday evening for pickup, the penthouse resembled a war zone of luxury. Egyptian cotton sheets draped over mahogany dining chairs, cashmere throws serving as fort walls, crystal dessert bowls repurposed as treasure holders for the scavenger hunt Alistair had apparently designed spanning all 3 floors of his residence. She found them asleep among the ruins, financial reports serving as makeshift pillows, Zara's hand curled trustingly in her father's. For a moment, Taraji allowed herself to witness without judgment. The fearsome corporate titan transformed into a father with marker on his Italian suit cuff, and a peaceful expression she'd only glimpsed once before, in the quiet moments after they'd made love 6 years ago. She exhausts me, Alistair admitted later, after Zara had been transferred to her bed without waking. He ran a hand through disheveled hair that would horrify his board members. I've negotiated 48-hour mergers with less mental taxation. Welcome to parenthood, Taraji replied, unexpectedly comfortable in the domain where she held expertise he lacked. You're doing well, though. She's happy with you. The acknowledgement cost her something to give, and Alistair recognized the concession. He studied the architectural diagrams Zara had created, startlingly complex structures with load-bearing calculations in the margins. She has your analytical mind, he said, indicating the mathematical notations that definitely came from Taraji's influence. But her heart, that capacity for joy despite understanding how complicated the world is, that's entirely you. The compliment caught Taraji off guard, revealing the dangerous territory beneath their careful arrangement. Their bodies remembered what their minds tried to forget. Magnetism neither time nor circumstance had diminished. We should establish a regular schedule, she said quickly, retreating to practical matters. Her school needs consistency. Alistair nodded, allowing the retreat. My assistant will coordinate with you. And Taraji, he hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. Thank you for allowing me to know her. You could have left New York when you saw me at the pool. The sincerity in his voice, absent any manipulation or corporate strategy, disarmed her more effectively than his billions ever could. This gradual emergence of Alistair, the man from behind Alistair the Empire, threatened every boundary Taraji had carefully constructed. As May turned to June, their truce evolved from strained tolerance to something resembling partnership. Alistair attended Zara's school science fair, standing awkwardly among other parents who pretended not to recognize the billionaire in their midst. Taraji accepted his invitation to use the corporate box at the symphony when Zara's music class performed. They created a shared digital calendar, exchanged updates about Zara's development, and carefully avoided any conversation that might disturb their fragile equilibrium. But beneath the structured arrangements and polite exchanges, currents shifted, unseen but powerful. Taraji found herself noticing things she'd tried to forget. The precise way Alistair's hands moved when explaining complex ideas, the rare but transformative nature of his genuine smile, the focused attention he gave to whoever was speaking, whether billionaire or doorman. Alistair, meanwhile, discovered himself lingering during exchanges, arriving early for pickups, suggesting coffee discussions about Zara's progress that somehow evolved into conversations about economics theory or architectural design. He found himself making mental notes about things that would interest Taraji rather than just their daughter. The uneasy truce had created a no-man's land between their separate lives, a space where their shared love for Zara allowed something else to quietly take root. Neither acknowledged nor denied its existence as fragile and persistent as the first growth after a forest fire. Chapter 8. Strategic Alliance. 3 weeks into their fragile co-parenting arrangement, Alistair found himself defending an unprecedented decision before his executive board. For the first time in Cook Hospitality's history, a child's laughter had echoed through the executive floor. Zara's school had an unexpected closure, and rather than cancel his obligations, Alistair had brought his daughter to work. "Gentlemen, I appreciate your concerns," Alistair addressed the 12 stern faces surrounding the mahogany table. "But I assure you, Zara's presence did not compromise any sensitive discussions. My assistant created an appropriate workspace in my private office." Vernon Matthews, the eldest board member whose family had invested in the original Cook Hotel 6 decades earlier, cleared his throat disapprovingly. "Alistair, while we all understand your enthusiasm for newfound fatherhood, this company has protocols. Children, particularly those with complicated public narratives, create unpredictable variables." The implication that Zara represented a PR complication rather than a person sent a surge of unexpected protectiveness through Alistair. 6 weeks ago, he might have agreed with Matthews's assessment. Now, having experienced Zara's analytical mind and unfettered joy, he found himself increasingly intolerant of reducing her to a corporate liability. "My daughter," he emphasized the relationship deliberately, "has a name, Mr. Matthews, and her presence today demonstrated exactly the family values this company claims to uphold in our mission statement. Now, shall we proceed to the Dubai expansion figures?" The meeting concluded with tense formality, board members filing out with sideways glances and whispered concerns. Alistair remained at the table, reviewing documents until the boardroom emptied. Only then did he allow his shoulders to relax from their perfect posture. The private elevator announced an arrival with a discreet chime. Expecting Reynolds with security protocols for the weekend, Alistair was surprised when the doors parted to reveal Taraji. Her expression, tense, serious, urgent, immediately commanded his full attention. "The Fontaines filed for a hostile takeover this morning," she stated without preamble, stepping into the boardroom. She wore a simple navy dress rather than the designer wear his usual corporate associates favored, but carried herself with an authority that needed no designer labels for validation. "Elise claims your personal crisis demonstrates leadership instability. Their offer is 12% below market value, deliberately undervalued to attract shareholders concerned about your—" She paused, selecting her words carefully. "Changed family circumstances." Alistair's jaw tightened. "How do you know this? The filing hasn't hit public records yet." "I still have Columbia connections in finance." She handed him a tablet displaying documents and projections that shouldn't have been accessible outside closed boardrooms. "Professor Mikhailov still mentors me," he called when he saw the preliminary paperwork cross his consultant's desk. For a moment, Alistair studied her rather than the damning documents, this woman who continued to surprise him with her capabilities and connections. Then he focused on the projections, his experienced eye immediately grasping the devastating implications beyond mere financial loss. The Fontaines' restructuring plan would dismantle everything meaningful he'd built beyond profit margins. 20,000 employees, he said quietly. Community development programs in 12 countries, the children's hospitals, and educational foundations. The Fontaines would dissolve all of it immediately. Corporate speak for gutting anything without immediate quarterly returns, Taraji agreed. She moved to the display wall where Alistair projected financial models, interfacing with his system with unexpected familiarity. The timing is strategic. Your board is traditional, conservative. They're uncomfortable with personal complications. Hence targeting my family situation, Alistair concluded, bitterness edging his tone. Not just that. Taraji manipulated the display, highlighting voting patterns across major shareholders. Your board values family legacy, traditional structures. The Fontaines represent fourth-generation leadership, presenting stability against what they're characterizing as your impulsive personal choices and unpredictable management style. Alistair moved beside her, close enough that the subtle scent of her perfume, something with notes of vanilla and amber, triggered visceral memory. They're positioning Zara as a liability. Because they don't understand she could be your greatest strength, Taraji responded, surprising him. Your board needs to see that Zara's existence strengthens rather than threatens the company's future. The strategic framing, neither sentimental nor exploitative, reminded Alistair why he'd been unable to forget this woman beyond her physical appeal. Her mind matched his in both incisiveness and ethical boundaries. "Work with me," he said suddenly, the proposal forming as he spoke. "Not just co-parenting. Your economics background, your strategic insight, we'd be formidable together against the Fontaines." Taraji's eyebrow arched skeptically. "You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a partnership." He hesitated, choosing words with unusual care. "Your analysis today demonstrated what I've suspected since that first night. You see patterns others miss, including me. We approach problems from complementary perspectives. And Zara gets parents who respect each other enough to collaborate professionally as well as personally." He noted her hesitation and added, "Plus, you'd have resources to launch that financial literacy foundation you mentioned, the one targeting underserved communities." Taraji recognized the offer for what it was, not a romantic overture, but something equally intimate, partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose. More dangerous than passion, perhaps, because it acknowledged connection beyond physical attraction or their shared child. "I won't be a corporate prop," she stated firmly. "No staged family photos or scripted interviews about our unique modern family." Agreed. The truth is compelling enough without embellishment. "Equal input on all strategic decisions regarding this situation." "Equal partners," he confirmed, extending his hand to seal the arrangement. When their fingers met, the contact sparked awareness neither could entirely suppress. They held the handshake a moment longer than business protocol dictated, both recognizing they had crossed some invisible boundary, from adversaries to allies, from fragile truce to deliberate alliance. "I should warn you," Taraji said as she gathered her materials. "I don't have corporate-appropriate clothing. Waitressing doesn't require Armani." For the first time in their renewed acquaintance, Alistair smiled, not the calculated expression he deployed in negotiations, but something genuine that transformed his features. "I know an excellent tailor who can solve that particular problem by tomorrow." "Of course you do." Her answering smile carried unexpected warmth. As they departed the boardroom together, Reynolds waiting discreetly to escort them down, neither fully understood how this strategic alliance would ultimately alter the architecture of their separate lives, creating something neither had designed, but both would eventually recognize as home. Chapter 9. Beneath the Surface. The Fontaines had not anticipated Taraji Zola. Their corporate strategists had prepared for Alistair's legal team, his board's defensive maneuvers, even potential public relations campaigns. What caught them entirely unprepared was the economics genius who had once saved Alistair from a burning Ferrari and now orchestrated financial strategies that systematically dismantled their takeover attempt. Miss Zola's community investment projections reveal overlooked revenue streams. The J.P. Morgan representative informed a stunned boardroom 3 weeks into the Fontaine offensive. Her model for integrating local economic development with luxury hospitality demonstrates 32% higher returns than traditional luxury isolation models. Across the table, Taraji maintained perfect professional composure, nothing in her expression revealing how deeply satisfying it felt to watch conservative banking executives validate concepts she developed during late-night study sessions at Columbia years ago. Beside her, Alistair observed with growing admiration how effectively she translated complex economic theory into practical applications his board could appreciate. Their strategic alliance evolved with surprising effectiveness. Taraji's economics brilliance brought fresh perspectives to Cook Hospitality's entrenched methodologies, while her outsider viewpoint identified market opportunities Alistair's team had overlooked. Meanwhile, Alistair navigated Zara's world with growing confidence, his imposing figure becoming an increasingly familiar sight at school events. His corporate efficiency repurposed for organizing classroom volunteering with military precision. I never expected the Father's Day breakfast to run on schedule for the first time in history, Ms. Chen, Zara's teacher, remarked to Taraji during pickup. And the spreadsheet Mr. Cook created for the science fair judging was remarkably comprehensive. The Fontaine's aggressive takeover attempt faltered against their united front. Investors responded positively to Alistair's newfound balance between corporate ruthlessness and evident family commitment. Articles that initially questioned his stability now featured headlines like Cook's Renaissance, How Fatherhood Humanized Hospitality's Ice King. Memorial Day weekend found them retreating to Alistair's Hamptons estate, a strategic withdrawal to plan their final counteroffensive against the Fontaine's weakening position. The oceanfront property, with its glass walls and modernist architecture, provided neutral territory for both professional collaboration and parenting coordination. The board has unanimously approved your counter-strategy, Reynolds informed them as they reviewed documents on the terrace overlooking the Atlantic. The Fontaines have withdrawn their latest offer. Our sources indicate they're considering a complete retreat. As Reynolds departed with the confidential documents, Taraji and Alistair shared a rare, genuine smile, co-conspirators in victory. Beyond the terrace, Zara splashed in the infinity pool under the watchful eye of a swimming instructor, her laughter carrying across the manicured lawns. "She's fearless in water," Alistair observed, paternal pride evident in his voice. "Like you were that night." The reference to their beginning lingered between them like a charged current. Taraji found herself studying the man beside her, no longer just the billionaire from magazine covers, but Zara's father who arranged his schedule around school plays and spent Sunday mornings perfecting pancake art with mathematical precision. The weekend unfolded with unexpected ease. They prepared dinner together in the gourmet kitchen, Alistair revealing hidden culinary talent developed during isolated international hotel openings. Later, they watched the sunset from Adirondack chairs, conversation flowing without the usual strategic calculation that characterized their professional interactions. "I never wanted this life," Taraji admitted, gesturing toward the oceanfront opulence surrounding them. "I grew up watching wealth devastate communities rather than build them. My neighborhood in Detroit was systematically dismantled by the same investment firms that funded luxury developments elsewhere." "And I grew up with everything except genuine connection," Alistair responded, the honesty surprising them both. "My father measured success in acquisitions rather than relationships. The only time he expressed pride in me was when I negotiated my first hotel purchase at 17. This glimpse beneath their respective armor beyond professional collaboration and parental cooperation, shifted something fundamental between them. That night, after Zara fell asleep, exhausted from swimming and building elaborate sand castles, they shared cognac on the moonlit terrace. The conversation meandered through economics theory, architectural philosophy, and childhood memories, revealing complementary minds shaped by dramatically different circumstances. When Alistair's hand accidentally brushed hers while reaching for his glass, neither pulled away. The contact, brief and seemingly inconsequential, nonetheless established a bridge across carefully maintained boundaries. Morning brought practical matters back into focus. While Alistair took Zara for her swimming lesson with an Olympic coach who owed him a favor, Taraji used the opportunity to prepare for their Monday strategy meeting. Searching for her misplaced phone in Alistair's study, she accidentally knocked a portfolio from his desk. The leather folder fell open, scattering papers across the herringbone floor. As she gathered the documents, legal terminology caught her eye, phrases like custody evaluation parameters and parental assessment protocol. Recognizing Zara's name, Taraji's instinctive caution gave way to maternal concern. What she found as she read further cut deeper than any betrayal she had anticipated. The documents contained comprehensive psychological evaluations, custody assessments prepared by Cook family attorneys, and tactical recommendations for systematically limiting Taraji's involvement if her economic background and cultural influences proved incompatible with the Cook legacy. One passage burned itself into her consciousness. While Ms. Zola's initial cooperation proves advantageous for corporate stability, preparation should be made for transitioning primary influence to Mr. Cook once the Fontaine situation resolves. Her continued presence represents unpredictable variables best managed through limited, structured interactions. The clinical assessment of her worth as Zara's mother, reduced to calculated risk and strategic advantage, shattered the trust she had cautiously extended. All their progress, the partnership, the shared victories, the almost friendship, revealed as elaborate manipulation with a predetermined expiration date. Methodically, Taraji returned the papers to their folder and replaced it on the desk. With practiced calm developed through years of concealing financial stress from Zara, she packed their belongings while her daughter remained blissfully unaware at her swimming lesson. When Alistair returned to the house, Zara chattering excitedly about holding her breath underwater for 30 seconds, he found Taraji in the foyer with their bags packed, her expression transformed from yesterday's warmth to glacial resolve. "Zara, honey," she said with forced brightness that her daughter immediately recognized as unusual, "go change out of your swimsuit, please. We need to head back to the city early." As Zara reluctantly obeyed, confusion evident in her expression, Alistair studied Taraji's rigid posture with growing comprehension. His gaze shifted momentarily toward his study, understanding dawning. "Taraji," he began, only to be cut off by the precise, controlled tone she typically reserved for difficult restaurant patrons. "We'll discuss this when we're alone," she said quietly, her eyes conveying what her controlled voice concealed. Not just anger, but something far more devastating. Confirmation of her deepest fears about trusting him, about belonging in his world, about the impossible bridge between their realities. The sunny Hamptons morning, so full of possibility just hours earlier, now felt like the calm before a hurricane, the pressure dropping, the air charged with imminent destruction. The foundation they had cautiously built together suddenly revealed to be built upon shifting sand rather than solid ground. Chapter 10. Glass walls, the Hamptons estate's master suite, stood silent except for the rhythmic packing of Taraji's suitcase, each item folded with precise, controlled movements that belied the trembling in her hands. Outside, distant thunder announced the approaching storm system that had been threatening all weekend, nature's dramatic punctuation to the collapse of their fragile peace. Zara slept soundly in the adjacent room, blissfully unaware that the weekend family retreat her parents had promised, their first extended time together outside Manhattan, was ending prematurely. The custody documents Taraji had discovered in Alistair's study lay scattered across the king-sized bed, their legal terminology clinical yet devastating. Psychological evaluation to determine maternal educational influence, contingency plans for neutralizing disadvantageous cultural exposure, and most damning, strategy for transitioning primary custody while maintaining positive public perception. The door opened without a knock. Alistair stood framed in the threshold, still in the casual linen shirt and trousers he'd worn for their afternoon on the beach. The documents clutched in his hand matched those on the bed. Clearly, he'd discovered her discovery. "You won't even hear my explanation?" His voice carried none of the corporate authority that commanded boardrooms and intimidated competitors. Instead, a rawness emerged, something close to pleading from a man who had never begged for anything. "What's to explain?" Taraji continued packing, unable to meet his gaze. "Your legal team provided a comprehensive assessment of how to minimize my influence while maintaining the perfect corporate family image. One blouse folded with particular force. Very efficient. If I wanted efficiency, I'd have settled for Elise." His response cut through her practiced calm. "I would have accepted my board's recommendation to negotiate a traditional arrangement, financial support in exchange for supervised visitation." This halted her movements. "Then why these?" She gestured to the damning papers with their psychological evaluations and custody recommendations. "Because my attorneys operate on autopilot, protecting Cook interests as they've done for 3 generations." Alistair crossed to the fireplace dominating one wall of the suite, feeding the documents to the flames page by page. "What they failed to understand is that you and Zara are my interests now." The papers curled and blackened, his family legacy's protective protocols turning to ash. Taraji watched, unconvinced despite the dramatic gesture. "I fired them tonight." He turned to face her, stripped of the corporate armor she'd grown accustomed to seeing him wear. 9 attorneys with a combined century of loyalty to my family, gone because they presumed to dictate terms for my daughter's future. The dramatic gesture should have seemed theatrical, but the genuine anger darkening his features suggested authentic rage rather than calculated display. Still, Taraji's defenses remained firmly in place, too many hopes having dissolved over the 6 years of Zara's life for easy trust. Pretty speech. Not a speech. He moved to the bedroom's floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the Atlantic. Rain had begun falling, droplets tracing patterns across glass designed to withstand hurricane-force winds while maintaining perfect transparency. "You know why I built my hotels with glass walls? Why every Cook property features structural transparency as its architectural signature?" The question seemed rhetorical, but his pause demanded response. "Aesthetic preference," she suggested, deliberately minimizing what was clearly a deeply personal choice. Growing up in old money meant suffocating behind facades, perfect appearances concealing empty realities. His palm pressed against the glass as lightning illuminated the coastline. "My father maintained flawless public standing while destroying my mother through 1,000 private cruelties. No one saw because the walls protected the family image above all else." The confession, unexpected and uncharacteristically vulnerable, penetrated Taraji's defenses more effectively than logical arguments or legal counters could have. This glimpse into the foundations of his character aligned with observations she'd made working alongside him these past weeks. His insistence on ethical transparency in business dealings, his refusal to manipulate public narrative around Zara's discovery. "The glass in Cook properties isn't just architectural preference," he continued, voice lower now. "It's rejection. Rejection of everything I watch destroy my mother, the suffocating weight of appearances, the isolation of perfection, the silent complicity of luxury. Lightning flashed again, illuminating his profile, the tension in his jaw, the uncharacteristic vulnerability in his posture. I've spent my life creating transparent spaces, he continued, while keeping everyone at a safe distance. The contradiction worked until you crashed into my life, twice now, shattering everything I thought I wanted. Taraji remained silent, understanding dawning that this wasn't manipulation but confession. Something Alistair Cook, master of boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations, likely rarely offered. When I look at Zara, he said softly, I see someone incapable of facades. Her emotions, joy, curiosity, even anger, are transparent, honest. She didn't learn that from me. Children are naturally authentic, Taraji countered, though her voice had lost its defensive edge. Not all children. I wasn't. His admission carried the weight of old pain. By her age, I'd already learned to modulate every response, to calculate advantage in every interaction. My father's perfect corporate air. Outside, the storm intensified, wind driving rain against glass engineered to reveal while protecting, an apt metaphor for the man himself, Taraji realized with sudden clarity. Those documents, he gestured toward the dying embers in the fireplace, represent everything I'm fighting against, not what I want. They're the institutional reflex of old money, control, appearance, legacy. The opposite of what I want for Zara. The rain lashed harder against the windows as Alistair turned from the glass to face her directly, vulnerability replacing his usual command. I don't know how to be the father Zara deserves or the man you might trust. My only examples were lessons in what to avoid, not templates to follow. His honesty, unvarnished and clearly painful, created a counterpoint to the prepared speech she'd expected. The simple admission of uncertainty disarmed her where grand gestures couldn't. I want to learn, he concluded simply, but I can't do that if you disappear again. For the first time, Taraji glimpsed not the billionaire or even the father, but simply Alistair, a man as shaped by his privileges as she was by their absence, equally terrified of failing at what matters most. Thunder shook the house foundations as she weighed response against instinct, protection against possibility. Before she could formulate an answer, a small figure appeared in the doorway, Zara in penguin pajamas, clutching her stuffed dolphin. Is the storm going to break the house? She asked, voice small with concern. The parental shift was immediate in both adults. Alistair crossed to his daughter, crouching to eye level with natural ease that would have seemed impossible weeks ago. The storm can't hurt this house, he assured her. I designed it myself with special materials that bend with the wind instead of breaking. Like how you told me to be flexible when I'm swimming against currents, Zara clarified, connecting his engineering lesson to their morning swim with precocious insight. Exactly like that. His genuine smile transformed features hardened by years of corporate calculation. Would you like to watch the storm from the observatory? We can see lightning over the entire ocean from there. Zara's eyes widened with excitement, fear forgotten. Can we make hot chocolate too? With extra marshmallows, he confirmed, lifting her into arms that had grown comfortable with the gesture. He paused at the threshold, meeting Taraji's gaze over their daughter's dark curls. Will you join us? The question carried weight beyond the immediate invitation, an offering of tentative trust, a request to suspend judgment long enough to witness possibility. The custody documents still smoldered in the fireplace, but so too did the barriers Taraji had constructed to protect herself from hoping. 5 minutes, she said finally. I'll meet you in the kitchen. As father and daughter disappeared down the hallway, Zara already explaining the scientific principles of lightning with terminology gleaned from her recent science museum visit, Taraji turned back to her half-packed suitcase. The neatly folded clothes represented certainty and control, the familiar pattern of self-reliance that had served her through years of single motherhood. Yet something about Alistair's unguarded admission, his acknowledgement of not knowing how to navigate this terrain, resonated with her own carefully hidden uncertainties. The custody documents had triggered her deepest fears, but his response had revealed corresponding vulnerability rather than calculated manipulation. Perhaps true transparency required mutual risk, the courage to remain present when instinct demanded retreat. Not blind trust, but cautious presence with eyes wide open. Lightning illuminated the room once more as Taraji made her decision, closing the suitcase without finishing her packing. Some departures could wait until morning, until evidence could be evaluated in daylight rather than emotional darkness. She found herself pausing at the dresser where a photograph stood, one captured by Reynolds during Zara's school play last month. In it, Alistair watched their daughter with an expression Taraji recognized from her own reflection whenever Zara achieved something remarkable. Pride mingled with awe at having somehow contributed to creating this extraordinary person. Taraji placed Zara's favorite sweater near the door, insurance against the chill of the observatory, and headed toward the kitchen where her daughter's laughter mingled with deeper tones. The storm outside intensified, but within glass walls engineered for transparency and strength, three people navigated the uncertain territory between separate pasts and possible future. Chapter 11. Calculated Risk. The photograph dominated financial news websites worldwide. Taraji entering Cook Tower, Zara's hand clasped in hers. The headline beneath it, Cook's Secret Family. Gold Digger's 6-year scheme exposed, confirmed Elise Fontaine's final desperate attack. 3 brutal news cycles of character assassination followed. Tabloids dissected Taraji's waitressing career as calculated proximity to wealth, claiming she had deliberately worked at Lumiere to target wealthy patrons. Financial analysts questioned Alistair's judgment in both personal and professional matters. Conservative board members issued carefully worded statements expressing concerns about leadership stability in uncertain times. When the Fontaines launched their revised hostile takeover bid, strategically timed amid the media frenzy, Cook Hospitality's stock plummeted 12% in a single trading session, nearly $1 billion in market value evaporating in hours. The emergency shareholders meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning, Reynolds informed them in Alistair's home office, his professional demeanor intact despite the crisis. Our sources indicate Ms. Fontaine's father has secured enough proxy votes to potentially succeed. Several institutional investors who previously supported us have shifted positions. Alistair studied market projections displayed across multiple screens, his expression revealing none of the turmoil beneath his perfect composure. Options. Legal recommends strategic retreat to core holdings, sacrifice international expansion to preserve domestic assets. Reynolds hesitated, uncharacteristically uncomfortable. Some board members have suggested demonstrating stability through more traditional arrangements. The implication hung heavy in the room. Distance himself from the scandal of Taraji and Zara. Issue a statement about temporary arrangements and focusing on verified paternity. Create separation that shareholders would find reassuring. After Reynolds departed to implement security protocols for the next day's meeting, Alistair found Taraji in Zara's bedroom. She sat beside their sleeping daughter, gently stroking her hair while watching the rise and fall of her chest. A maternal ritual unchanged whether performed in a walk-up apartment in Astoria or a Central Park penthouse. "Your empire's burning," she said quietly without looking up, having sensed his presence in the doorway. "Because of us." Then let it burn. The conviction in his voice surprised them both. I spent 6 years building hotels that meant nothing without you and Zara in them. The simple declaration, devoid of calculation or strategy, finally made Taraji turn to face him. For the first time since discovering the custody documents at the Hamptons estate, she allowed herself to fully see the man before her, rather than the corporate titan her defensive instincts had reanimated. Those documents you found, he continued, maintaining careful distance, respecting the boundaries she had re-established. I fired the entire legal team that created them. Not for show, not temporarily, permanently. 9 attorneys with a combined 57 years of service to my family. That doesn't change the reality we're facing, Taraji replied, economist's mind already calculating angles and possibilities. The Fontaines are exploiting market uncertainty. Your investors fear the unknown, me. You're not responsible for their prejudice, but I can neutralize it. Determination crystallized in her expression as she rose from Zara's bedside, careful not to wake their daughter. I've been analyzing your community investment initiatives since we started working together. There's a revolutionary model there, untapped value your shareholders haven't recognized. They moved to the living room where Taraji pulled out her laptop, opening files she'd been developing privately for weeks. As she outlined her concept, Alistair recognized elements of the economic theories she'd passionately discussed during their first meeting 6 years before. Markets as communities, rather than just mechanisms, profit derived from strengthening ecosystems rather than extracting value. This would transform our entire operational model, he observed, both impressed and concerned. The board will resist. Let me present it, Taraji challenged, not as your child's mother or your strategic partner, as an economist with a viable model that protects their investments while creating sustainable growth. It's too risky. The Fontaines have already painted you as an opportunist. Walking into that boardroom is exactly what they don't expect, she finished. They've calculated that I'll hide from public scrutiny, that you'll distance yourself from me to save your company. Their entire strategy depends on conventional responses to their unconventional attack. Through the night, they refined the presentation, running probability scenarios and preparing counterarguments for skeptical board members. When morning came, Taraji stood before Alistair's closet, examining the row of impeccable suits with analytical detachment. Not those, he said, appearing in the doorway. I had something delivered for today. The garment bag contained not another designer dress attempting to make her fit his world, but a tailored navy suit that honored her professional identity, structured yet distinctly feminine, authoritative without mimicking masculine power symbols, the perfect armor for the battle ahead. Against Alistair's objections, his protective instincts warring with strategic necessity, Taraji entered the shareholders' meeting alone. In the tailored suit that expressed confidence without ostentation, her Columbia economics credentials on display in both her presentation materials and her commanding knowledge, she approached the podium while board members whispered behind their hands. Gentlemen, she addressed them with measured confidence, before voting on the Fontaine proposal, allow me to present an alternative vision for Cook Hospitality's future. For 27 minutes, she outlined a revolutionary business model combining Cook Hospitality's luxury portfolio with community-based tourism initiatives. Using mathematical precision and market data, she demonstrated how ethical capitalism yielded superior returns through sustainable community investment. Her command of financial principles silenced even skeptics as she methodically dismantled the Fontaines' value proposition. The choice before you isn't between stability and risk, she concluded, meeting the gaze of each board member individually. It's between short-term extraction and long-term growth, between a model that depletes resources and one that regenerates them, between yesterday's hospitality and tomorrow's. When the votes were tallied 3 hours later, after intense questioning and debate, the Fontaine takeover collapsed under the weight of Taraji's irrefutable logic. The Cook Hospitality stock closed up 8% on news of the rejected offer and innovative strategic repositioning. That evening, watching Manhattan lights from his penthouse, Alistair found himself studying Taraji with new eyes, not just the woman who had saved him from the crash or given him Zara, but a formidable mind he'd underestimated. She sat reviewing congratulatory emails from her former professors, unaware of his scrutiny. "Why didn't you tell me you'd been developing this model all along?" he asked finally. She looked up, a small smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "Some things need space to grow," she answered simply. "Including people." The distance between them, physical and emotional, suddenly felt unnecessary. The barriers erected by misunderstanding and self-protection seemed arbitrary against what they had built and defended together. When his fingers grazed her wrist, the contact ignited something beyond physical desire. Recognition. Recognition of complementary strengths, shared values beneath different expressions, compatibility previously obscured by circumstance and assumption. Their first kiss in 6 years carried none of their initial night's desperation or uncertainty. Instead, it held acknowledgement of all they'd become separately and could become together. When he lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward his bedroom, it felt not like surrender but like conscious choice. Two people finally seeing each other completely, choosing connection with clear eyes rather than storm-driven impulse. Later, as moonlight filtered through windows overlooking the city they had both claimed in different ways, they spoke of future possibilities, not just for Zara, not just for the company, but for themselves. Not with the naivety of new love, but with the hard-earned wisdom of those who had seen the worst in each other and still chosen to build something meaningful together. "We should update the co-parenting agreement," Taraji murmured against his shoulder, economist's practicality surfacing even in intimate moments. Alistair laughed quietly, the vibration resonating beneath her cheek. "Always the strategist. What terms would you suggest?" Her answer came not in words, but in a kiss that spoke of partnership beyond legal definitions, connection freely chosen rather than contractually established. In that choice, made with full awareness of risks and possibilities, they found something that neither wealth nor independence alone could offer: the courage to build something lasting from the collision that had irrevocably altered both their lives 6 years before. Chapter 12. The Architecture of Home. October sunlight gilded the Grand Horizon's rooftop garden, transforming glass and steel into warm copper. Autumn flowers lined an aisle that curved like a river rather than following traditional straight lines. A deliberate rejection of convention that reflected both the bride's independent spirit and the groom's architectural philosophy. At the path's end stood Alistair, unrecognizable to those accustomed to his boardroom demeanor. Vulnerability visible in every line of his body, the corporate mask completely abandoned. The assembled guests represented worlds rarely merged. Taraji's former professors from Columbia, seated beside Saudi princes, Zara's teachers from public school mingling with hotel executives, Ms. Haverton from the community center engaged in animated conversation with the mayor. Miss Nguyen, their former neighbor who had watched Zara on late nights, occupied a front-row seat of honor, beaming with maternal pride. Reynolds, serving as best man rather than security chief today, adjusted Alistair's boutonniere with uncharacteristic nervousness. "The rings are secure, sir," he confirmed, falling back on professional terminology to mask emotion. "Thank you, James." Alistair used the man's first name deliberately, acknowledging the friendship that had developed beneath years of professional service. "For everything, not just today." Reynolds nodded, understanding the reference to his role in the search that had ultimately led to this moment. "She would have found you eventually, sir. Some forces can't be avoided. Conversation hushed as string musicians shifted to a new composition, not the traditional wedding march, but an original piece that incorporated elements of both classical structure and jazz improvisation, commissioned from a composer whose education had been funded by Cook Foundation scholarships. A collective breath held as Zara appeared, carrying a leather-bound journal instead of flower petals. At 6.5, she carried herself with poise beyond her years, the blue dress chosen to match her eyes against brown skin, a perfect visual representation of her blended heritage. "These are all the stories Mama told me about my daddy before I met him," she announced to assembled guests with clear confidence, holding up the journal embossed with celestial patterns. "And these," she turned to a section with blue tabs, "are all the adventures we've had since." The simple statement brought tears to eyes throughout the gathering, the innocent summary of a complex journey from separation to union, from strangers to family. Then Taraji emerged, and Alistair's carefully maintained composure visibly faltered. Her gown honored her African heritage while embracing contemporary lines, architectural in its precision, fluid in its movement. Like the woman herself, it bridged worlds without compromise. She carried no flowers, but instead a small architectural model, a perfect replica of the Ferrari that had crashed on a rainy night 6 years earlier, transformed into something new and beautiful. When she reached him, she placed the model on a small pedestal beside them. "From collision to creation," she said simply, words meant for him alone despite the microphones. Their vows eschewed traditional promises for hard-earned truths, written together during late nights after Zara slept, each word carefully chosen to honor their unconventional journey. "I built glass towers," Alistair began, voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Believing transparency was honesty. You taught me real honesty requires letting someone see beneath foundations to the earth, where everything begins. I promise to remain transparent not just in what I show the world, but in what I share with you, fears, hopes, uncertainties, and growth." Taraji's voice carried across the skyline when she responded. "I sought independence, believing it meant never needing anyone. You and Zara showed me that choosing connection from strength creates something greater than either isolation or dependence. I promise to choose our connection daily, to build alongside you rather than apart, to accept support without sacrificing self." Their shared promise, spoken in unison, centered on the small person standing beside them. "We promise to honor the miracle that connected us, to create spaces where she can discover herself freely, to remember always that the most valuable structures are not built of steel and glass, but of patience, understanding, and unconditional love." As Alistair slid a platinum band onto her finger, not a diamond but a meteorite fragment forged in cosmic collision, he whispered words meant only for her. "From strangers to family, my most valuable creation." The reception unfolded across multiple hotel floors, each representing chapters of their journey. The rooftop pool where Zara had recognized her father, the ballroom where Taraji had defended the company, the library where they had first begun working together. Executive Chef Pascal had abandoned traditional wedding fare for a menu that told their story. Chicago deep dish pizza representing Taraji's first haven during pregnancy, Alistair's childhood cook's coconut cake that he'd shared with Zara during their first weekend together, and dishes from every city that had shaped their separate journeys toward each other. As stars appeared over Manhattan, they slipped away from the celebration, leaving Zara happily coordinating a dance performance with her school friends under Ms. Haverton's watchful eye. Their destination was the penthouse suite where fate had first connected them, the space Alistair had maintained but rarely visited during his 6-year search. The space had been transformed, not the impersonal luxury of 6 years ago, but thoughtfully curated details, photographs of Zara's childhood Taraji had kept, engineering sketches from Alistair's first hotel renovation, elements of their separate lives now intertwined. The storm-watching blanket from the Hamptons draped across a chair. The economics textbook Taraji had quoted during their first conversation. The stuffed dolphin Zara had outgrown, but neither parent could bear to discard. "I had something built for you," Alistair said, leading her to a previously hidden roof access, excitement evident in his usually controlled demeanor. "Something I've been designing since the Hamptons weekend." Taraji followed, curiosity piqued by his boyish enthusiasm, a side of Alistair few ever witnessed. The stairway opened onto the penthouse roof, a space typically reserved for mechanical systems and maintenance access. What awaited made her breath catch. Above the penthouse sat a private sanctuary, a glass observatory housing a swimming pool that seemed suspended between earth and sky. Unlike the rooftop pool where Zara had found her father, this intimate space was designed for two, its curved walls creating the illusion of floating among Manhattan's lights. The ceiling retracted, opening to the stars above, while the floor, transparent like the Grand Horizon pool but with deeper architectural significance, revealed not the building's atrium, but a garden growing 17 stories below, illuminated by soft lights. "The water," Alistair explained, emotion making his voice rougher than usual, "comes from places that matter to us." He guided her to different sections of the pool, each subtly distinct in temperature and mineral content. "From Chicago, where you first felt Zara move within you. From Dubai, where I built my most acclaimed hotel while searching for you. From the Hamptons, where honesty finally broke through our defenses." His fingers traced the junction where the waters merged. "Because water connects everything, like Zara connects us." The engineering feat was remarkable, but it was the emotional architecture that moved Taraji. The thoughtfulness behind each element, the symbolic meaning infused into structural choices. This wasn't the grand gesture of a billionaire, but the personal creation of a man who had learned to communicate through building. "It's perfect," she whispered. "Understand what this represented. Not possession, but invitation. Not display, but revelation." "Not yet," he answered, removing his jacket and loosening his tie. "It needs to be inhabited to be complete. That's true of all structures. They're just possibilities until people bring them to life." When they entered the water together, she still in her wedding gown, he in formal trousers and shirt, the spontaneous abandonment of propriety represented everything their relationship had become: conventional expectations yielding to authentic connection, planned perfection, surrendering to joyful immediacy. Their bodies met with the recognition of travelers finding home after separate odysseys, the water supporting and surrounding them as they rediscovered each other. Their passion transcended mere physical reunion. It was acknowledgement of all they'd become separately and together, desire informed by knowledge rather than merely mystery. Alistair's hands, which had designed skyscrapers and signed billion-dollar contracts, moved with reverent precision as they removed layers of fabric now heavy with water. "I've waited 6 years to truly know you," he murmured against the hollow of her throat, his touch reverent exploration rather than possession. The admission carried deeper meaning now than simple physical desire. Knowing included understanding her principles, respecting her independence, honoring her strength as Zara's mother and as his intellectual equal. Taraji's response was both surrender and claim, accepting and demanding in equal measure. The woman who had fiercely protected her autonomy now drew him closer, recognizing that true strength included the courage to connect completely. Their movements created concentric ripples across the water's surface, echoing outward like the consequences of that first fateful night. As moonlight bathed them, Taraji guided his hands to the small of her back, showing without words where tension had always gathered, where vulnerability lived beneath strength. This intimate geography lesson, the sharing of personal terrain, represented a trust deeper than physical intimacy. In return, Alistair revealed his own vulnerabilities: the shoulder injury never properly treated after the crash, the tension he carried in his jaw from years of controlled responses. Later, wrapped in robes at the pool's edge, they watched Manhattan's constellation of lights. Water droplets in Taraji's hair caught starlight, creating a personal galaxy around her profile. Alistair studied her with quiet wonder, memorizing the moment when everything he'd built finally found purpose. "What are you thinking?" she asked, turning to catch his contemplative expression. "That my entire life has been constructing spaces for other people to inhabit," he answered with uncharacteristic openness. "Hotels, resorts, corporate headquarters, all designed to impress rather than express. Until now, I never built a place where I truly belonged." Taraji's fingers entwined with his, water still clinging to both their wedding bands. "Some architects forget that true shelter isn't about walls or even roofs. It's about creating space where someone can be fully themselves, seen, accepted, challenged to grow. Like you've done for Zara. Like we're doing for each other," she corrected gently. "This," she gestured to the observatory, the pool, the view, the intimacy they'd created, "is architecture, too, building something neither of us could create alone." Below them in the penthouse, Zara would soon return with Reynolds to sleep surrounded by the artifacts of her newly united family. The stuffed octopus from her early childhood, the telescope Alistair had given her, books from both parents' collections now merged into a single library of possibility. And above, two people who collided by chance made conscious choices to remain connected. Architects of a foundation built not on fantasy, but on the courage to see each other completely, flaws and strengths alike, and still choose to build something lasting together. As the water of their separate journeys mingled in the pool that suspended them between earth and sky, their separate stories merged into a shared narrative, one neither could have written alone.